Guys, I want to get loud all of a sudden.
Do it.
Sorry, I'm going to.
It's you. I knew it was coming.
I'm sorry, guys.
Can't
I
hold
need
them back.
to do that.
It is. You feel like Poseidon chucking that bugger down in the water.
Sucking that bugger. Did you butt out that deer? I did not butt out that deer, but the next one I get, it's getting its butt out.
Is that little Stevie out here in the back?
Drobop. Bow drop, I'm sorry. Drobop. Hello. Stay tuned. I'll be back after my seizure. Every little chipmunk that was running around, everything's dead quiet, and I went like that. Just happened.
I saw what is in essence a nature-gasm.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sonic Campfire. I'm Kyle, and to my left I have...
I'm Steve.
This is Dave.
Hey, I'm Ryan.
Welcome back, Ryan.
Hey, guys.
Welcome, Ryan. It's been a long time.
It's been a little while. I apologize, but we're back in fashion now.
Glad you're back, bud.
Glad to be back.
So, guys, we have a pretty awesome guest tonight that's
You ain't kidding, bud.
pretty knowledgeable about a lot of things in the outdoor world.
I brought my pickaxe because
Yeah.
I'm going to be picking his brain tonight.
It's going to be like a battle of the bow doctors between Ryan and our guest.
Oh, yeah.
Tonight we have Mr. Greg Litzinger. How's it going, Greg?
What's going on, guys?
Hey, Greg.
Greg, tell our listeners what you're all about and kind of what you do.
See, I'm a lifelong Jersey resident, 40. Newly just had my first daughter.
Hey, congrats.
A week ago. So
Wow.
New dad, stepdad. And enjoy pretty much anything outdoors. Fishing, hunting, mostly hunting these days, shooting my bow, camping. Just all around connoisseur of the finer things in life, I guess.
I like it.
Yeah.
But just 1 week old, I'm guessing you're not getting a lot of sleep right now.
Oh, no. I went to bed last night at 1, was up at 4:30, and then went to work at 6, came home, and the wife went to the store, run some errands, and I just got off baby duty, and now I'm on with you guys.
Busy man.
I just sleep right through that. I have a 10 month old. Mine's 10 months old, and even last night my wife was like, "Oh, I was up at 2." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't hear anything."
Should have woke me up. I slept right through it.
I would have gladly helped if you woke me up.
Yeah, it's a cool experience. Yeah, just Annette, my daughter, she's a night owl. She just sleeps during the day and is up all night.
Yeah, bless your heart.
There's just no way. Yeah, it's going to be hard to break that. But and my stepdaughter, she's out of school now, so my wife's basically running around like a zombie.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was actually going to suggest you throw her in the back of the pickup and go out spotting, but you're in Jersey, aren't you?
Yeah.
Can you guys Can you spotlight in Jersey?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. I know there's a couple
There's
of
no,
states around us where it's actually illegal to spotlight at all, but in Jersey you can. So yeah, my kids that was the easiest way for me to get them to fall asleep when they were younger.
Yeah.
Throw them in the car seat in the back of the truck and drive around spotting. They'd be out.
Really?
Oh yeah.
That's a pretty good idea.
I'll tell my wife that in July. I'm like, the baby's crying. I'm going to take her for a ride and calm her down.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a win-win.
I'm up to one anyway, so.
Now, Greg, you're well versed in the outdoors, but you're as of fairly recently, you've really dialed it in the archery community. It's in your name on all the social media that you're a bow hunting fiend. Kind of.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a little insight on kind of how you developed this strong interest into archery? And
I don't think bow hunting fiend is a incorrect way to describe him. Right?
Yeah.
That's your Instagram.
Yes.
Instagram handle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my Instagram handle and YouTube, all that stuff. But my dad was a hunter. So I watched him shoot a bow when I was younger, as a kid, and I picked up a bow, this little yellow recurve. I think my dad still has it at his house, and he'd shoot his bow, and I'd shoot my bow, and I was fascinated by it. Like, I was a lifelong fisherman when I was a kid. I grew up on the water, so I fished, but there's just something about archery that was just magnetic to me. And as I've gotten older, in order to truly be good at something, you have to start giving up something. You can't be a great fisherman / great hunter / great archer, great everything. It's just impossible. You can be decent, but I didn't want to be decent. Like, I wanted to be the guy.
World class.
And yeah, pretty much. And I got a coach because I had some target panic, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And now I live for 3D archery and hunting, basically, bow hunting. So I'm a self-taught bow mechanic. I worked at a few places as a job. So I did it for a living for 5 or 6 years. I've built bows for guys who went to Africa, shoot Cape buffaloes. Like, I've been around, a lot of guys that did, recurve, that Joe Ed stuff. So I pretty much had my hand in a lot of aspects of archery.
Yeah.
And for me, I just love 3D, unknown 3D. It's just, it's pretty rad knowing that I can estimate decent out to 40, 50 yards and hit where I'm aiming and win some money in the process.
So could you explain what a 3D archery shoot is? Some people that listen to the show aren't necessarily familiar with all the...
Are you talking about yourself,
terms.
Steve?
Present company excluded.
Oh, okay.
Well, 3D archery is pretty much a 3D animal, foam, and placed at varying distances, and you got to shoot for points. I shoot IBO, which is the X. The center is an 11. Then you got 10, then an 8, a 5, and a 0. And you usually have 30 targets or 40 targets, depending on how big the tournament is, and winner takes all pretty much in your class. There's different classifications. You have the open class that go out to 50. They have the bow hunter class out to 35. Women's kids classes. So I wouldn't be going up against somebody that has a 3-foot stabilizer and a scope. I shoot pins, fixed pins. So they kind of regulate the field that way, and just a bunch of guys just shooting for points.
And you're doing all of those. You said you're shooting IBO.
Yeah.
And it's unknown distance, right? You're not using a rangefinder out there. You actually have to. And that's, to me, that's one of the most impressive parts about doing tournaments like that with guys that are actually really good at it. Is, I can estimate yardage enough to probably be able to take an ethical shot on a deer out to about 40. Mm-hmm. But these guys are like within a half, excuse me. There's guys that are like within a half yard accurate.
Really?
On some of their estimates, and it's amazing.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's what separates probably the top 5 guys in each classification. Like, you can have the fastest bow in the world. Like, my bow shoots about 298 feet per second, maybe 301. But if you can't, estimate, it doesn't really matter like how fast your bow is really shooting. It's a whole. You can't just be a good estimator. If you're a terrible shooter, you're a great estimator, you'll be an all right 3D shooter. So it encompasses a whole spectrum of, your mental and physical capabilities. Because archery is such a mental game that you can get one bad shot and it can put you in a tailspin, and it could get real ugly real fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's actually a quote that I read from you where you were quoting something that you learned from your instructor about archery and being a really mental game. Could you share that quote if you know which one I'm talking about? Could you share that with everybody?
Man, he's told me so many. I've said a few.
It was about the only thing that you can control.
Oh, is the 6 inches between your ear.
Yep.
That's it. You can't control the weather. You can't control the wind, the footing, the target placement, your fellow competitors. If you're shooting with a guy that's a negative Nancy, that can make for a long day because they'll just suck the life out of you, man.
Yeah.
Guys that are just real just not a happy person. I mean, it can beat you up mentally. So if you can train yourself, and control your actions and your thoughts, you will beat probably 80% of the competitors that you're shooting against that day. It's pretty much a good, I guess, thought pattern to have for even just life in general. You can really control you. I can't control my cat, obviously. I can't control my boss, people driving on the road, so all I got to do is just worry about me and control my thoughts and actions. And I mean, even in the deer woods, I can't get upset if somebody's in my spot. That's not going to help me kill a deer,
Yeah, it's true.
That's so true with, during the winter off season time, I shoot at a indoor archery range. They have their own indoor 3D range. And on the days where I'm in a rush and I have somewhere else to be afterwards are my worst days. Because I'm always like, man, that guy's taking too long beside me. We just want to go pick up arrows. What's this guy chit-chatting about? He just needs to shoot. But I'm not focused on me. And and like you're saying, when you're out in the woods, especially public land or sometimes private land, there's a guy next door who's mowing his lawn, or there's so many uncontrollables in hunting that you can get yourself upset, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a slippery slope too. One bad thought. I mean, you can have a million positive thoughts or a million positive people in a room. It takes one, a-hole to bring the whole mood of the room down. All it takes is one.
Hey, you mentioned target panic earlier. What steps did you take other than a coach? Like with your coach, what steps did you take to curb that?
Like I said, I had, target panic is such a broad, I don't necessarily believe it. I say it because that's what they can relate to it. But target panic it's an all-encompassing thing. It's 9 times out of 10, it's a form flaw. It's not really target panic, because if you can shoot a target at 3 feet, but you can't shoot one at 10 yards, that's not target panic, because you can hit a target at 3 feet. So it's more of a mental. 99% of the time, it's all in your head. Because even an untuned bow, a bow that's off, will still shoot somewhat straight. And realistically, but target panic, it's just you get this idea in your head, like we were talking earlier. One bad seed, and you start watering that seed, and next thing you know, you're thinking about things you shouldn't be doing. You're overthinking. You're trying too hard. So there's a whole, mess of stuff going on in your head. And I got my coach. I shot 3 deer in the guts. I was always a very good archer, and I got into the whole speed phenomenon. I got a speed bow, fast arrows, and all this stuff. And fast bows aren't necessarily accurate.
Thank you.
Yeah. they expose a lot of flaws, and that's what happened with me. And then I shot 3 doe in a matter of, I don't know, a couple, 2 months or so. All just straight cut shots. I lost all 3, and it hurt me. Like, to lose a deer, it hurts me. A doe, buck, it don't even matter. And I take it real personal, because I pride myself in being a good shooter, and it really drained me mentally. So I tried fixing it myself, and that was a disaster, because I didn't know what I was trying to fix. I was told I figured I had target panic, but I didn't know what it was. So I got my coach, and we pretty much just worked on my mental game, my thought process, how I behaved even outside of archery. It was a long uphill battle, because no man likes being told what to do, especially by another man. So, we really didn't work on my form too much. My form was good, like you said, for the most part. Like, everything was good enough to shoot well. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to shoot. But it was just how I thought, how I approached it mentally. And we worked on that, and it was an uphill battle, because he knew me better than almost like I knew myself, how I behave. Like, Dave's really intelligent. He's a very good people reader, and we just clicked instantaneous. And it took I don't know, probably 2 years of messing with him to fully buy into a system. And I have ups and downs, but once I really let go and be like, all right, he knows his stuff. And it was like a light switch. And when that thing switched, the light turned on, my whole life got better. Outside of archery, work got better, my relationships, and it was like, wow, this is pretty gnarly, actually. I'm shooting my bow, lights out, I'm winning tournaments, everything's going well. I'm like, who knew archery would make me a better person?
Now, how long ago was this that you kind of had this reconciliation?
Almost a decade ago. That speed bow, all it did was amplify the flaws I had. Because it's funny to go off on a little tangent here, but the whole heavy arrow craze. Yep. In high school, I shot a 70-pound high country with 25 14s and Thunderhead 160s.
Jeez.
Yeah, with flipper rest, basic a bare bones bow, and I literally knocked the air off their feet before. I broke shoulders. The bow was bad, and it was slow, and it was forgiving, and I shot that bow, long time, and then I got another one, slow bow, single cam, and it shot great, 30, 40, stretching out to 50 yards sometimes, and then I got, can't remember, it was a PSC, I don't remember what one, but it was just, just terrible. Just terrible. It was a nightmare, basically, because you go from hitting what you want at will to, you can't even hit, anything. It's a long uphill battle. It requires a lot of work. A lot of people try and cure this, form flow issue in a few months' time.
How long of a battle was it for you?
Probably took me 2 years to get a really good handle on it.
Wow.
I was better after a few months working with my coach, but I kept bouncing through releases because I wasn't comfortable, and
that is dedication right there.
It's also proof positive, though, that it's a lot of it, 90-some% probably is mental. Right. And I think the reason that it would take you, or probably most people who really were going to dedicate themselves to improving themselves the way you did, it's going to take that long because you've got to get past that point in your head that's telling you that there's some mechanical reason for the issue. It's the release.
Yep.
I'm making contact somewhere on my rest. It's my stance. It's my anchor point. There's got to be some reason. It's not me. Yeah. It's something that I can fix.
I went through 3 releases in 3 weeks this year because I was having a rough start to the season. And I know what you mean, but it was between my head. It was between my ears, not with the mechanical advantage, disadvantage from each release.
Yeah, it's so funny. We as human beings, men especially, we're a little rougher because even working at shops, guys, especially men, they don't want to hear anything. Women are a little more open to it. They're more appreciative to advice, but men are. Even me, nope, it's everything else but me. We don't want to admit that we're the problem. And it's yep, I'm the reason my life stinks. I'm the reason I'm a bad archer. It's me. I'm the only constant in my life that's me. Yeah. So as soon as you open yourself up to it's you, if you're not killing big deer, it's nobody else's fault but your own. If you're not catching big fish, it's nobody else's fault but your own. It's not it's not anybody else. It's you. It's how you approach things. It's the books you're reading. Even the people you're hanging out with.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What are you doing Saturday morning? Are you sleeping until 8, 9 in the morning? Me. My little range in the house here, I work 2 jobs. So I come home at 10 o'clock. I would shoot 20 arrows, but it would take me about an hour to shoot 20 arrows, get myself mentally prepared for each arrow. And that went on for months. Every night I shot 10 to 20 arrows, and it took me an hour. And it was so much dedication to each arrow. And
that is such great.
What you got to do.
Yeah. And that's such great advice. I think I'm sure we're going to have a bunch of takeaways here tonight, but that's the first one I want to point out to everybody that's listening. I know, and I've worked in the archery industry basically part-time, but for the last 20, 25 years. And I would tell people, it's not doing you any favors to go home and shoot for 4 hours every night in the backyard and fatigue yourself, because when you're, especially if you're shooting to become proficient as a hunter, you get one shot at a deer. Yeah. That one shot, that first shot you take in the backyard at 20 yards.
That's your shot.
At your broadside 3D target. That's the one that counts.
Yeah, you don't get a warm-up shot in the woods. You don't get out of your truck, set up a target, do a couple of shots, then walk to your
so the fact that you're taking an hour to go through 10 to 20 shots versus going in the backyard and shooting 400 shots in 2 hours that's impressive.
Yeah, it's and that's one thing I said my coach and I we worked on is like everything matters. Everything you do. Just archery, just life in general, every thought that you have. If you rush your shooting, then you're not really in that moment. You're somewhere else, and you're not going to get better. Like you might get a little bit better from muscle memory, but are you really getting the most out of your training?
Are you teaching yourself bad habits?
Yeah, like I have issues with some of the celebrity hunters, celebrity Instagram and YouTube hunters. Even some of the pros, like they advocate shooting 50 hours a day, 100 hours a day. That's retarded. Absolutely retarded. If you're building up muscle memory, that's one thing, but each arrow, each shot has to be deliberate. You're not doing your followers or people in general any favors. You look at a sniper on a long range sniper.
Yep.
They're very methodical in everything they do. Like everything matters. They're down, to windage. Everything's got to be perfect before they squeeze that trigger. They're not just down there just rifling off shots at 1,000 yards. They're very deliberate. Archery, granted, only 20 yards. It's the same thought pattern. Shooting sports is shooting sports. Baseball, golf, all the same. You're swinging golf clubs. Are you just swinging golf clubs, or are you trying to swing to get better and to improve your game? That's how I approach, my shooting.
Yeah.
And
now there has to be a buildup though to get to that point, right? Because there is something to be said for shooting, 40, 50 rounds in a night and doing that to gain the muscle memory and to work on your form. There's a reason to do that as a beginning archer. But if you're working towards taking it to the next level and becoming proficient and efficient, then you have to go the opposite direction with it, and that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and if you're trying to if most people know how to shoot a bow, most people can pull an arrow, a compound back or even a recurve back and let it go. You have the basic muscle memory there, but to really tweak it and to get better, sometimes volume is your enemy because old habits die hard. 5 good shots over a course of 3 weeks is going to serve you better than chucking 20 hours that are semi-good every other night.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing for people because they want to rush the process. I know how to shoot a bow. I can make this and I can shorten this timetable up to 2 weeks instead of 2 months. Everybody's in a hurry. And it's like you just end up falling right back in the same boat. Like you gain a little bit of ground and then the old habits kind of die hard. And I struggle with that. I mean, it took me, like I said, it's all 2 years or so to really get a full handle on it. And I get it from time to time in the backyard here sometimes. It's like I'm in my backyard, I let my guard down. It's like, well, that was dumb,
Well, and you touch on something too. I mean, I know for me, it's like I've always looked at it from the pure mechanics of everything. It's like it's like, oh, am I gripping it the wrong? Like, how's my grip? How's my where are my anchor points? And it's like all the articles out there in the world. I'd say about 90 to 99% of them fix just that. The mechanics of your draw and how you hold the bow, and it's seldom talked about is the mental factor that you could have perfect form, but like you said, if your mental game is off, then it's not doing you any favors.
$1,000 bow. I mean, like I love going to the range, in a tournament or just even a fun shoot. And a guy's got brand name, top line, everything. I buy most of my stuff used or second hand off Archery Call, and go there and beat some guy who's got $2,000, $2,500 setup with a bow. I got $600 in. I mean, not just beat him, just I mean, just totally just take his soul. Like that's a great feeling. It's like I just, it sounds kind of mean saying that, but it's just so rewarding because some of the guys they deserve to be taken down a notch. That's awesome. This. They got the big brand new truck. I'm pulling in my old rusted up Dodge and go there with my beat up bow and just totally just destroy him. It's like it just feels good because it's all form. Like you look at the guys that were great shooters in the 70s. You ever shot a compound from late 70s, early 80s? Those things are terrible. Those guys were shooting 300s, in perfect rounds with shooting bows from the valley, no back wall, like no let, 50% let off. Those guys were badass. I mean, those dudes can shoot, any bow and shoot well. Those today are so efficient.
Yeah.
Solid back walls. You're a lot more consistency. So, I'm glad I live in this era with the compound.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Greg, after you've adjusted your shooting, at what point did you really start, gaining traction in the 3D archery world?
I worked with Dave, and the second, I would say, probably like 9 months into it, because I seen him. It was right after hunting season. There was a 3D shoot in PA. Me and my buddy Tony went, and they just had an IBO Worlds qualifier the day before, and this was like a fun, or the week before. So this was like a fun shoot. Mm-hmm. So I'm going there, and I'm just like, oh, it's a shoot. I end up shooting like a 292, and I was like, wow. I shot 292, and I was like, a lot of mental stuff, just visualizing the arrow hitting the target, just working on that aspect. My yards was good, and I mean, this was with a hunting bow too. This was the bow that shot 268 feet per second. So skinny arrows, and I shot like a 292 or 291 or something. And I told my coach, and he's like, and I'm like, yeah, I think I might want to try some more. He's like, and because he knew I'm a very competitive person.
Right.
He's like, well, do you want to compete? I'm like, well, I guess I could try. He goes, no. Do you want to compete? I was like, yeah, I'd like to compete. So he goes, all right, so that's the goal for next year. We're going to get you to the Worlds. So I was like, yeah, I just want to go. He goes, no, you're either going to go to win, go to do well. You don't go just to go. Because that is a terrible goal to have. You can't goal set. What's your goal to get to the Worlds? That's a terrible goal. Because it's not defined. Like, yeah, I got there, big deal. Like the goal should be that, top 10 or top 5 or top 20, whatever your, capability is.
Yeah.
So, and that's pretty much how it started. And my first year competing was horrible. I was so jacked up on adrenaline. I couldn't execute shots. It was so much fun. And I had so much like rage and aggression in my veins and my arms and muscles. I was like, this is, pretty rad, actually. I didn't shoot well my first year. That's a learning experience, because of the nerve and the pressure you set goals. So you add, you add a lot of outside forces onto yourself, I guess. Mm-hmm. And that took, I don't know, probably a year and a half to get a handle on the nerves. Because the first 5 targets, I'd be terrible. I'd be so amped up. I'd be cool in the practice range. You get to the first target, and it was like, I want to prick this tree down with my hands. It's like so much adrenaline. I'm like, why am I so excited? And just Dave was like, you're just happy. It just makes you, it gives it meaning. And then, that one, shot that goes offline, it creates the domino effect of poop. So, now it's pretty good.
I used to golf, and I'm a terrible golfer. Like, just terrible. But if it's funny, you kind of compared those two earlier, and I'm sort of putting it all together here now with the mental thing. But when I would make a bad shot, like they were all pretty much bad, but when I would make one that was
exceptionally bad,
it was. They were all, for forever after that. The entire day was shot. The entire match or round or whatever you call it in golf. I can't remember. Was done. Yeah, yeah, it was done. You know, they were all terrible. So
yeah, and that's I think that's what separates. You know, even in like the local tournaments, even bigger ones, that's what separates even golf, or tennis, baseball. What separates the best is you can have natural talent. Natural talent is pretty far. You know what I mean? But an Olympic athlete, you know, they're so well trained in their mental game, you know, on top of their physical game, like they're almost unbeatable. You know, like they don't break. There's no cracks. You know, even you know, one bad shot doesn't affect them. And it took me a long time to get over, you know, a bad shot. Like I'd be shooting well, and like, you know, I'd misjudge or like, you know, pull it right, you know, and end up shooting like an 8 or a 5, and then I thought that was the end of my life. Day's over, can't win with a 5, and I would set myself in a self-destructive pattern. And a few years ago in Virginia, I shot 2 5s, and then I shot another 5. And this guy, old guy, I'll never forget, was like a turning point in my mental game for me. He goes, "Man, if you can get yards right, you'd be a good archer." And it was like, I could be a good archer? I am a good archer. And those 3 5s, I pretty much wiped them out. I ended up shooting 16 out of the last 18, 19 targets were all X's. I mean, I absolutely crushed the second half of the course and ended up placing third. I'm like, all this time, like 1 5, I got 3 5s and still placed third. And probably one of the hardest courses I've ever shot to this day. It's like, wow, it's not over. One bad shot doesn't define the day. It's how you overcome that, you know, bad shot or that shot that doesn't end up where you want it to be. So your recovery plan, you know, even like shooting on a deer, you know, if you make a bad shot on a deer, you have to let that shot go. So when the next one comes in, like you're fully focused on putting a good shot on. If you're dwelling on that negative shot, that, you know, shot in the guts or the shoulder, that deer coming in, like you have a 50-50 chance of repeating that shot because you're focusing on that shot. You can't let it go.
It's kind of like when you cast a whopper plopper up onto a rocky bank and it gets hung up.
Right.
And you wiggling it, trying to get it off there, and your line breaks. And then you put another lure on and you do something very similar the next cast.
Your story is very specific.
I'm speaking in generalities, trying to put it together for people that may just fish, but
No, that's.
Yeah, I mean, for your listeners that fish, it's the days you're flipping and pitching, or you're skipping rubber worms on their dock, and there's days that you can skip that thing 20 feet under a dock, and you're rolling with it. You're happy. You're positive, you know, and you get a couple dingers, but it doesn't affect your mood. And then there's other days where you try that, and like you said, it's in the tree or in the dock. Everyone, bam, bam, bam. And then you just go in a self-destructive, I want to snap my pole in half, rage on the boat. And then you're like, oh, this is a terrible day fishing.
Yeah.
You know?
Been there.
Yeah, that's the tough part is getting over that, is identifying it, recognizing it, and getting over that mental part of it. So that's really impressive that you were able to dedicate yourself, you know, for that amount of time to actually get to that point. Because it's a lot of it's self-awareness. Once you can identify it, you know, that should be the first point for you to know, okay, now I'm going to change it. So that's really great.
Yeah, and so many people are looking to for excuses that you talked about earlier. If I get this new bow, I'll be a good shooter. No, you're not. You might be a good shooter when you first get it because you're aware it's a new bow and mentally, man, this is it. First shot's great, but old habits going to kick in, and within a month or two, that bow's for sale on Archery Talk with half of what you paid for it. And I'm buying it from you.
That sounds awfully specific.
You bought it for.
Well, Greg, if we could, I want to change the course here just a little bit for us.
Yeah.
But I'm going to key it off of something that you mentioned a little while back. You talked about, you know, you get out of your archery what you put into it when it comes to practice. Something that I know stands out, you know, with your history of deer hunting. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about hunting right now. Something that stands out to me is the kind of deer that you're getting in New Jersey on public land. And I think you would be in the same boat as me, and you would agree with this. you get out of your hunting what you're willing to put into it. You said earlier about if you're sitting on your couch Saturday morning at 9:00 and you're not shooting your bow, you're not going to become a better archer. Same deal. If you're sitting on your couch 9:00 on a Saturday morning in August, or worse yet, in March, you should be out putting in some time. Hunting season isn't over at the end of the regular season. Once you can't fill a tag anymore, it doesn't mean the season's over. That's the beginning of the next season.
Yep. Yeah, it never ends. It's with any endeavor you get it never ends. If you want to be a great baseball player, you practice year round. Great hunter, you're training year round to be a great hunter. From the books you read to the time you spend in the woods, because there's a lot of guys that put time and effort in, but except they're not very goal based. They're in the woods, but what are you doing in the woods? Like, what is your goal? Like, every time I go out in the woods, like, I have a specific goal why I'm there that day. I don't just randomly go in the woods like, I'm going to go for a walk in the woods today. Like, every time I'm out there, it's for a purpose. And that purpose, gives you direction. And, after a few years, things start to really, turn on for you because you're motivated. You're seeing progress. You're seeing things you missed before because you're not just out there to be out there. I'm big in postseason scouting. I don't do too much summer scouting because we got chiggers here. Chiggers are the devil.
Yeah.
Those things are the devil. But I poke around a little bit in summertime, but from middle of January until May, I mean, every second I get, I'm in the woods looking for beds, rubs, hidden funnels, anything, and I cover a lot of different areas. Like, I hunt all over the state. I don't just hunt the mountains or the big woods. I pretty much hunt every possible terrain I can find that I think could make me a better hunter.
So for our listeners, what are you doing this time of year, or what could they be doing this time of year in their area to get ready for the fall?
I know a lot of guys are hell bent on this the trail camera. I don't use trail cameras
at all.
I have them. No, I've never killed a deer using a trail camera.
No kidding.
I run them. Yeah, I run them to pretty much. I test. My one buddy, Rat Getter Fence. I test a lot of his products in the public land down here. So I run cameras on a couple mock scrapes and stuff like that. But I think trail cameras are a tool that most people don't use efficiently, especially in public, because a deer that's been around a few years, he smells human scent. He knows what's up. He's going to be on high alert right from opening day. So for me, I just do a lot of road driving, binoculars, old school. I know where the deer are going to be feeding. I know he's feeding here, he's bedding in this general area. And with my postseason scouting, I kind of know where his bedding might be. And if I know he's feeding here, or I see a buck that's worth hunting, I know I'll hunt him come fall. But I try and stay out of the woods as much as possible, unless it's pouring down rain. Then my scent's all washed away.
Yeah. Now, Greg, so for our listeners, I mean, obviously PA is obviously well known to be a highly pressured state.
Yes.
But we're fortunate enough that we do have a large amount of public land. What would kind of be your checklist or your things to run down through if you were to give somebody kind of, your step-by-step process of, hey, here's the approach I take to, targeting whitetails and looking for where I'm going to set up a stand?
Yeah, you guys are, Western PA, so you got the mountains, ridges, hill country. So deer are very, they're terrain-based, and I'm primarily a bed hunter. I rarely hunt food. Unless it's like a persimmon tree or something. So I target beds and bedding locations. And with hill country, there you got your points. They're always bed off a point. Usually on the leeward side, not always. I'm gonna put the disclaimer out there. This is not fact. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a whitetail expert. I'm doing air quotes there, whitetail expert. I'm just a guy who's hunting a lot of, areas that are heavily pressured. So deer will bed on points, usually with the wind in their favor, usually on the leeward side, but not always. And I pretty much hunt within, less than 100 yards from their beds. So whenever I look at a top of the map for hill country, I just go to all the points, fingers, ridges, and I can usually locate rub lines. If I look at a top of the map, as I'm old school, I still use top of the maps, plus my GPS, but I look over top of maps all the time, and I can almost, without, I'm not certain, but pick out where a deer is going to be bedded, or I'm going to find a rub line. And that's just from the last 12, 13 years of just hunting mountains and looking over top of maps and keeping log books and everything.
I would have never thought when I think of New Jersey, all I think of is the shore. I would never thought of New Jersey as a mountainous place to hunt.
You're either at the beach or in Camden.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Delaware Water Gap, it's, I don't know, 60 or 90,000 acres of pretty much just one long, giant mountain range, parallel to the Delaware River. And I've killed 2 mature bucks and 2 whopper does out of there. 2 6.5, 4.5, 3.5, and the one doe was 9 years old.
Wow. Holy buckets.
Yeah. And another big old doe that I shot years ago. I never knew, but she was a big toad. But it's a good place it's humbling because you can go a season. I hung up there a couple times a year. I went 3 years without seeing a deer up there. There's not many deer, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's all just natural forest. Very little, a few hiking trails. Appalachian Trail runs through there, but it's you deal with a giant oak forest.
Are there
you got a whole forest.
Sorry, but keep going. Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, it's this giant oak forest. So you guys hunt oak forest.
Yep, absolutely.
And if you got acorns in the whole, 60,000 acres is dropping acorns, you're lucky, because deer can eat anywhere. They don't need to move very far. So, if you can locate some lone trees, it's good hunting. That's why.
And like you said, though, you're going to use the topo maps. You're going to find saddles and you're going to find funnels and things like that.
Yeah.
But you would also agree, I hope, that there's nothing better than boots on the ground.
Exactly.
Because you're going to, you can use those tools. Even Google Earth, is great for that kind of stuff. And sometimes Google Earth will show you things that you won't find on the topo map because you can actually see the vegetation. A lot of what I find in north central Pennsylvania, where we've got a camp, is I'll find, because deer also tend to travel on edges, right? So I'll find edges, and we're talking in big woods country in Pennsylvania, but I find edges of hardwoods where they run into pines, or a little swamp that has mountain laurel thickets to the left hand side. They'll run those edges, and you can't tell that kind of stuff from a topo map. Or from
exactly.
Sometimes you can't even tell it from a Google Earth. You really got to get on the ground and walk around and put in your time.
Yeah. When you were talking about the bedding areas and about 100 yards away, within 100 yards away from the bedding area, you're going to try to pick out trails going to and from feeding.
Well, to and from the bed, with the bedding area, I'm not a very good evening hunter, as most of my deer are killed in the morning, which is strange. From 7 to 7:45 is when I kill probably 90% of my deer, which goes against a lot of industry standards. But in the mornings, I pretty much sit right over top of the bed. I can shoot into the bed, or within 30 yards of the bed. I get there 3 hours before light, and it's a tricky thing because of the thermal drop, and there's kind of swirling winds that time in the morning, but it's a high risk, high reward, and I seem to get it right after a while. After a few tries, I can kind of, know where the deer, because you might have like three trails come into a bed, so it's like a coin toss, and you get a lot of gut instincts. I go in there and be like, all right, I'm going to sit here. I just know he's going to come in here, and sure enough, 7 o'clock, look down, oh, here he comes, and it just seems to work for me. But yeah, I'm a real aggressive hunter, like because if you hunt public land, like deer, especially older deer, they don't need to travel to get up and eat. Like they will literally eat a stick sitting in their bed to hold them off, because their first instinct is survival over anything.
Yeah.
To survive. They will wait till dark to eat. Yep. Yes. They'll wait till dark to eat. They have no reason to get out of that bed in the evening. So I have a hard time with evening, because sometimes I'll set up on a bed and I can see antlers, or I see him get up, and he don't leave until 20 minutes after dark. And it's like, well, now I'm stuck here for another 2 hours because I don't want to blow him out and get down on my stand.
Yep.
So in the morning, I can almost always beat them there, like 90% of the time. Especially these older deer, like I do believe they don't like to walk into a bed at dark in the mountain country, hill country, because they can't smell the bed properly, or if the wind is in their favor, they want to be able to see into that bed, look for danger. So I do believe these deer will hold up either in a satellite bed or just wait until they can see. Because a lot of times they might be getting in that bed and the wind's not perfect, but they know it's going to be perfect in an hour or two. So they're like trying to, time that good time to be in the bed and not expose themselves too much, in the daylight.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, with bed hunting, for me, if it's a primary bed, like every deer I've killed over a bed, it's a primary bed. Once they get within like 50 yards of that, their guard drops. They let their guard down. They'll come in wrong wind sometimes, because they bed there 4 or 5 days a week, maybe even more. So it's like pulling in the driveway of your house. You pull in, you don't look around, see anybody's around. You feel safe. And
right, that's true.
That's why I like morning hunting, over beds, because once they get within 50 yards, they can see that bed. I've watched, and high alert, and get in their little safe zone. They're just, you see them just relax. They know they're safe. They made it. They spend so much time there. They know they never smell humans there, or very rarely. So their guard gets dropped, and it could be an off wind, and they catch a whiff of a human, but it doesn't really affect them too much. It's strange.
Now, Greg, when you're hunting close to the beds, what are you typically trying to set up with a wind direction wise? Do you want because obviously they're coming from outside their bed heading to their bed, so you don't want a wind that's blowing like out of their bed, because they could pick it up coming in, and you also don't want one blowing into their bed. So what do you look for?
It's like I'm on that, like a trail will always be like a bend in a trail where a deer's coming in. Like trail's never direct into the bed. You hear a lot of guys, they say they come directly down. I've only seen that once or twice. These deer come from angles. Sometimes they come up from the other side of the ridge. So I do a lot of offsetting. Like I say, I'll wait for a northeast wind, because it's like a little bit off wind. It's a good wind. It's a great wind for them, but it's kind of like iffy for me. And I'll get right in the spot where like a trail might bend, or a blowdown, or something where they have to go around. That's where I'll set up. I've been using that tactic, that off-wind tactic, for years. I remember Miles Keller, when I was a kid, reading an article, and that's how he used to kill a lot of his deer. The trail will bend.
Yep.
You don't hunt the wind that's best for you. You hunt the wind that is best for them.
Yep.
And you'll always find a spot on the trail where that wind it's a disadvantage for them. If there's a 5-yard, 10-yard section where it's off, they still think it's good, but that's where you capitalize. And I've done a good job of seeing those things and actually making it work. And sometimes I get busted, not gonna lie. It's coming in, or a doe's coming in or something, and that off wind just isn't off enough, and you're like, oh, so close, so close. But like it's a high risk, high reward scenario that I think to be aggressive for older deer that you need to have, because if you're waiting for that deer to, come 100 yards away from his bed or to a feeding, you'll be waiting a long time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'd rather, if I even blow him out or he sees me, at least it gives me hope what I'm doing is working. So it kind of fuels the fire a little bit more. A quick little tidbit of information is I'm a terrible rut hunter. I kill all my deer from October 6th to October 26th.
Really?
Yeah. And the time where you shouldn't kill, these deer don't move, they're nocturnal, blah, 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 blah.
That's awesome.
Is the rut the same in New Jersey, time-wise, as it is here in Pennsylvania?
He's relatively new to hunting.
Probably pretty close.
What's that?
Stevie was asking him about the rut, and is the timing about the same as Pennsylvania? And it is.
About the same. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, like, in the mountains, the woods and the forest, they'll pre-rut a little harder around October 20th. And down here, it's like October 23rd. So basically,
Yeah.
So,
basically the same.
Something I want to make sure that I do point out too is based on the conversation we were just having about, the scouting that you're doing and finding these beds and where you would try to set up and looking at the prevailing wind. The takeaway from that for our listeners is do your homework before you get in the woods also, right? You're going to need to be in the woods walking around looking for this stuff, but do your research first. If you're going into a brand new area, Google is amazing in the fact that you can find out what the prevailing wind direction is for a particular spot, like based on a lat and long for a particular time of the year. So you could know what the prevailing wind direction is. Okay. You go in, you find a bed, and you pull up your compass either on your phone or if you actually know how to use a real one. Get out a compass and look at what direction that wind would be prevailing in October. And you can get a real good idea where you could safely set up and then work on your entry and exit route and bing, bang, boom. Cool.
Yeah, and that's another key that most people kind of look against is your entry and exit. For me, because I'm a morning guy, like my entry is critical. Like I will literally go a mile out of my way to get set up on something.
Yeah.
Where a lot of guys won't even get out in the evening. I'll take the long way. I'll wait till, I'll lower my bow down and I know deer might be in this field, and they're like passing through. I'll wait, 2 hours, get down like super slow, and then I'll take the long way back to the truck. And, because it ain't nothing worse than blowing out a deer, either walking in or walking out. That is just like a knife to the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everything's so good and I'm just going to just rush through this and it, boom, you blow out a buck or something. And it's like, it's like you can't breathe. It hurts to breathe.
My favorite spots to find are ones where, I'll find a long way in to avoid blowing anything out. And I will, like you said, I'm walking 3/4 of a mile or better to go out of my way to get there. But the best spots are the ones where when you shoot the deer, it's only about 100 yards to the truck.
Yeah.
I'll leave my truck and I'll walk a big circle for, 2 miles. As long as I shoot that deer and only have to drag it 100 yards, I'm good.
Yeah. So to
go ahead. No, go ahead.
So to recap for our listeners, pretty much takeaways from you are look at topo maps, use the geography to your advantage, scout with a purpose, actually look for varying trails while you're actually out in the woods. Take note of the direction that the trails are coming from, and also keep in mind the prevailing winds and find the cover or the beds. And that's kind of your recipe to success.
Yeah, and
awesome.
And you see the bed hunting is real. It's come to the forefront here lately.
Yep.
I've been doing it since Roger Ragland days in the early 90s.
Jiminy Christmas.
Invading big buck bedding areas.
Yep.
And I've always hunted pretty much. Probably why I don't rarely hunt food is ever since I was 14. Like I've been hunting bedding areas, funnels near a bedding area, etc. I was never a big food guy. Just never really got into that. Like I hunt with a guy. He can tell you what trait is. Deer eat this browse this time of year. I don't know that stuff. I know deer eat maple leaves and they drop in the ground and turn yellow, and acorns. That's pretty much it,
Yeah.
So, and the bed hunting, a lot of guys they get into it, but it's lonely hunting. Not gonna lie, a lot of sits where you don't see anything.
Yeah.
But when it happens, it happens so fast, and, like usually up close and personal. I mean, I'm looking at 2 deer here now. I mean, I shot them in the mountains. They were, one was 8 and one was 10 yards. And, I'm mountain, so I might be 20 feet up. That deer is like almost looking at me, because it's like, oh, it's like right there, and it's like hunting from the ground almost, because they're like, oh, where'd you come from? And it happens so fast.
Yeah.
It's, I won't say it's a slam dunk, but they're so close, and you can see the breath coming out. You see the moisture, on their whiskers. It is, I love shooting deer distance, but there's just something about shooting the deer at point blank range that is just, there's nothing like it.
Right on.
Well, and there's something to be said too. You may be able to hunt food or hunt over a field or food, and you may see a bunch of deer, but it doesn't really do you any good, because they could all be 100, 200 yards away from where you're sitting. So, you may see deer, but it's not doing you any good if you're hunting for them, and they're
not an archery season.
Yeah, anyway. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
and
yes, sir.
Yeah, I tell people all the time that I don't see many deer, a mature deer. Like if I see a mature deer, odds are he's within range, and there's a good chance of getting shot at. I don't see like deer like 300 yards off in the distance, like, oh, look at that giant. I'm not that guy. I never have been that guy. Like, I don't see many deer, but when I do see a deer, it's usually in the kill zone, or, even might be a little buck, if I'm seeing a lot of little deer, odds are I'm not seeing a mature deer, and I move on.
Yeah.
If I'm seeing a lot of does in October, odds are I'm not seeing a buck, I'm moving on. They're solitary creatures, and from my experience, these older deer, they're loners. Once October 10th hits, they're like, I'm going to go hang out by myself,
Yeah, it makes sense.
I'll tell you what, Greg, I hate to even say this, but I know we're coming up on time. This is the stuff I really wanted to dig deep on. So we're gonna have to get Greg back on. But what I want to do, Greg, I don't feel like I want to make sure our audience gets an opportunity to pick up on some of the knowledge that you've got that you can share with everybody. Could you let our listeners know where they can find you and watch some of the videos and get some of these tips from you that are just amazing?
Yeah. They said disclaimer, not set in stone. It's just my take on things. But YouTube, the Bowhunting Fiend, I got a decent amount of videos in there. A few 3 or 4 kills, a couple does, and mostly buck kills, all on public land, and a lot of scouting videos, salt marsh, some big wood scouting, some mountain, how I hunt the mountains, buck beds and stuff.
And honestly,
I got a bunch on my computer. Yeah, I got a bunch on my computer. I'm just too lazy to edit.
But if people are interested in really learning how to properly scout an area, I'm telling you, your videos are priceless. Whether it's comes with a disclaimer or not, there's so much information and tactics that people can learn from watching those videos on how you're doing it, and just put that practice into place for themselves, and it will pay off.
Yeah, thanks. I said 25, 13, so 20 to be my 26th year of bow hunting. So I kind of,
wow.
Yeah, I've been around the block. I've been a bow hunter before it was cool to be a bow hunter.
Yeah. Nice.
In my high school, when we were 14, it was maybe only a dozen people that bow hunted. Wasn't many.
Wow.
So I've gone from the old Baker tree stand, bear hugging trees with a climber, digging up your forearms and your stomach. Early season, pine trees and everything else, to lone wolves now.
You mentioned lone wolf. We didn't even get to talk about the kind of gear that he's dealing with and stuff like that. So
bow tuning.
I got hours worth of questions for you, Greg, and we're definitely going to get you back on. But definitely appreciate the time that you gave us here tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Yeah, I think we're having a part 2, probably early fall with Greg. But
wow, well,
I'll tell you what,
an hour already. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably do a 2-part episode in February with Greg talking about late season scouting, because I think personally that's when you can get the best stuff done.
Yeah, I think we might just have made a new best friend.
I think so.
Yeah. You guys are pretty rad. It flowed very well. It was fun.
Thank you. Guys, where can they find us?
They can check us out at rutandriverpursuits.com. Of course, all your social media outlets, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. Just search Rut and River Pursuits. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel, Rut and River Pursuits Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
There we go.
See ya.
See ya.
Later.
Rigga-migga.
What you want? A better archer to aggressive spending? Or, ow! My cat just attacked my foot. Get off. What is happening?
That cat.
Your cat's jealous of
That
you.
cat doesn't realize it's got to go about 78 yards before it's safe.
Yeah.
That's a first for us. I don't think we've ever had a cat
That's the
attack.
first cat attack on the podcast.
Scared the crap out of me. I didn't realize she was down here.